to visit this morning. Cindy is our relatively new intake specialist on our children's advocacy team at ADAP. So if you call our office and need to schedule, I can stand by the podium. Okay. You're gonna have to join me. Yeah, no, you look beautiful. You look beautiful. If a parent calls ADAP and wants to do anything, an intake for anything having to do with a child, you are going to get connected to Cindy Lester. We are very fortunate that she wanted to join us because she has years and well, I don't want to make you sound so old. She has,
I don't think that's going to be
she has years and years of experience specifically working with people with disabilities and in particular in the special ed field. So when she came on board, I was like, man, all we have to do is get her used to ADAP processes and all the paperwork and the computer system, because when it comes to special ed, she could teach us a thing or two or three or four. So I wanted to introduce her to you all and maybe get from you and from Cindy kind of a sense as to when you think about what ADAP can do to better support families, specifically around the area of special ed, what might those specifics look like? Because we're never content to rest on our laurels. We're always looking for ways to improve. So I'm going to start off with Cindy and let her maybe answer that question. You've been with us now. Last August.
August.
Oh, okay.
I started August the 15th.
Oh. Okay, so since August 15th, what has been your biggest thought about what families need from you and from us? What do they need in that special education advocacy world?
Basically, from what I'm gathering when I'm talking to parents, is they're not getting all the correct information from school systems, and wherever they're getting their information, it's not always correct. So that's what I think school systems need to do a better job of educating their parents on the correct process.
How much of that do you think is they just don't want parents to know, or they don't know the rules themselves?
It could be a little bit of both. If the parents knew exactly everything, they would be asking, you know, for the services. So I think they just kind of tell the parent what I think you need to know, so I don't have to spend too much money on this, and you know, I can get you to kind of go on your way. But when they call me, I correct that for them. I say, oh, I'm so sorry. You were told incorrectly. Here is what the truth is. So I try to educate them also.
So does that ring true for some of you? And I'll come out there. And any thoughts about what you've gone, many of you have gone through the process and maybe still be in the midst of it. When you think about what you might share with a parent who is frustrated, who's tired, who's convinced that their child is not getting what they need, what would you tell that parent? Anybody?
Angela Richardson. I would tell a parent in that situation, whatever your gut is telling you, follow that, because even with my son, when he was 2 or 3, he met the milestones on that pediatric checklist, but in everyday life, he wasn't meeting certain milestones. And so if your gut tells you that something is wrong, to follow your gut and don't stop, even if a doctor or a pediatrician says, oh no, he's meeting his milestones. But what cinched it for me was I had another child and they were 22 months apart. So when my daughter starts speaking more fluently than my son, who was 22 months older, I knew something was wrong and I wouldn't let anyone tell me otherwise. So if your gut tells you, then seek out the help. And we did get early intervention, and it wasn't because someone told me about it. It was because we went to Children's, they did an evaluation, and at the Spark Center, and we got diagnosed with mixed expressive receptive language disorder. And it was like, okay, that qualified him for speech. He got the speech, but I still knew something wasn't right. And it was after Sparks evaluated him, well, there's nothing remarkable here. So, in 3 years, have him retested. And so in 3 years, we had him retested, and then we got our autism diagnosis.
So Cindy, I know one thing that I often say to parents when I talk to them is they'll say, am I crazy for thinking blah, blah, blah? And I'm like you were saying, no, trust your gut. You are not crazy. You're not stupid for thinking that what you're being told seems wrong. If it seems wrong, it probably is. Now, often, that isn't 100% the case, but a lot of times parents are told things where there's no basis in fact.
We don't provide services until your child enters kindergarten.
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Not true.
This is Emily Bernard. Yes, from my experience, it's a combination of the school does not know the law as like they like to portray they do. And they will omit telling you what you need to know to help advocate for your child. It's a combination of both.
One of the reasons why I really like working at ADAP, other than everybody's so great to work with, is when I was at the State Department, we were explicitly told, be very careful what you say, because you will say something that is going to cause that local superintendent some problems. And he's going to call me, and I'm going to call your supervisor, and then you're going to get a call. So sometimes we skirted, No, That's what I told Nancy. I said, no. I don't skirt anymore. No, what I told Nancy, it's so nice to be in a working situation where I can honestly tell the parent, this is what is in the law. This is what your child is entitled to. And this is how we're going to help you get to that point. So no, we tell the truth at ADAP.
To build off of the original question, and especially Ms. Richardson and Ms. Bernard both made me really just think about it. The simple fact is, at some point, you're going to have to lose that Southern politeness in order to get what you need for your child. You're going to have to stay the course. You're not going to be liked all the time, but you're asking for what your child needs. You're asking, in some cases, what you yourself will need. You cannot remain silent until you finally get what you need.
I had a parent call me yesterday. She worked in the school where her son was attending. And she called and she said, he's not getting services. The special ed teacher just threw her hands up and walked out the door all in one day. So he lost the teacher. They brought in
literally quit. She literally quit.
She literally just said, I'm over this. And out the door she went. So they brought in a regular ed teacher who stayed 3 days. And, the bottom line is it just escalated. And she said, so I just made up my mind. I'm through with this. I want my son to get an education. So she met with the IEP team. She said, I want this, 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 and this. If I don't get it, I'm going to get an advocate and or a lawyer. So the next day there was a certified special education teacher sitting in the young man's classroom, teaching him the Orton Gillingham reading program. And she said, I'm happy. She said, the lady that's his teacher, I know her, she'll do a good job. So I didn't have anything I could add to that. So all I said was, congratulations. You have successfully advocated for your son. Keep up the work. So yes, she lost her Southern charm and she made her stand drew her line in the sand, and she got what she needed. Well, and when you work in the system that you're bucking, it's a difficult situation, and she's, she did it though. And I'm proud of her.
In harmony with what you just said about skirting, I actually called Angela Richardson here. I actually called the State Department of Education probably about 2 weeks ago, and I spoke with someone in special education. And so I knew what I wanted. So I asked for it, and she was like, well, the district doesn't have to give you that. And I said, okay, well, who do I need to speak with? Because my son's not enrolled in the system. I said, so who do I need to speak with to have that changed? And she said, well, you need to speak to the State Board of Education. I said, okay, so how do I do that? And so she started researching it, and she said, I'll get back with you. I said, well, let me make this easy for you. I'm going to give me your email address. That way you can just email me when you have the information. So I got an email Friday where she said, you don't have to do that. Just email this person and they're going to get it to Dr. Mackey for you. So I don't even have to speak to the board, but I can get my message directly to Dr. Mackey.
Good, good.
Cindy, could you, and we were talking about this the other day, we had a case that came in and you and I talked about it, and I had suggested that maybe you do a guided referral to the education specialist at the State Department. Can you kind of describe to the folks here how the special ed division structures itself in terms of those education specialists, what they're empowered to do, where they might want to, by necessity, they might need to hold back? Like how is it structured? Because I think a lot of times people look at this thing that's called the, State Department of Education, Special Education Division, but if you don't know who does what, it's kind of hard to interact with it.
Well, they've got the section is divided. They have individuals that do the due process part, the mediations, facilitated IEP meetings, state complaints, and due process hearings. Then they have people that do the budgeting, early intervening services. Then they have an individual that does the preschool. And then the other individuals are divided up and assigned regions within the state. And the regions within the state correspond to the board member regions. And that person is responsible for providing the technical assistance. We used to do training. I'm not sure if that's being done like it used to be in the past, but we would go out and do trainings within the schools and meet with teachers and principals and talk to them about the law and talk to them about how to better serve students, interventions, accommodations, how to write better IEPs, things like that. But that's what the regional specialists are. Their job primarily is to provide whatever that region that they're assigned to needs. And they take calls from parents within that region. So if you call and they might say, well, what school system is your child in? And you say Mobile, then they know how to direct the call.
And what is the limit of what? So a parent can file, for instance, a state administrative complaint. Well, they can file for a due process complaint. They can file for mediation. They can request a facilitated IEP. They can file a state administrative complaint, which we sometimes refer to as a 60-day complaint. And I usually describe that to parents by saying, it's not much different than a cranky letter that you would write to Comcast when Comcast isn't doing what Comcast is supposed to do. And of course, the 60-day complaint has to be resolved by the State Department within 60 days. But that's all handled by that conflict division.
That crew, yeah.
Right. So an education specialist, if a parent called the education specialist for, let's say, Mobile, what is that specialist empowered to do by way of resolving a parent's complaint? What is she going to do?
Typically, if you called me and gave me enough specifics, I would pick the phone up and I would call the coordinator. Okay. Oh, I thought you wanted me back. I would call the coordinator. I do not tell who the parent is, but I would say, you have an issue at a certain school with a certain principal. You need to work with him and help him understand that this parent can file a complaint. What he's doing is not legal. And if the parent calls me back, I'm going to give them the process to file the complaint. We would try to settle it for the parent without having to go that process, because like Nancy said, it takes up to 60 days and you want resolution ASAP. When you call, you want something done. And typically the coordinators would call the principal and say, hey, you're going to cause us a lawsuit. And things got better.
Have any of you ever tried or been connected through your work to an education specialist at the State Department? Okay, well, that's another avenue, I guess, that's out there for resolving complaints. And so the thing that I contacted, or that we talked about the other day, it was involved an issue where the school district was going to kick a kid out because he allegedly didn't live in the district.
Mhm.
He really, from what you described, he really did legitimately
Since
live in the district.
kindergarten,
Since kindergarten.
and he was
now-
13.
Yeah. So we could contact the superintendent, but I suggested to you, why don't you have the mom contact the ed specialist at the State Department and have her have that conversation with the superintendent? You're about to get into a whole bunch of trouble.
Yeah.
And so we kind of, what we call, do like a guided referral with the mother's permission. We could have contacted the education specialist, whoever it was for that district, you know, Miss Smith, we're connecting you with this mother who's stating the following things about this particular problem. Can you look into it? And then the education specialist would probably have that kind of conversation that Cindy was suggesting. So it's another resource for families to use that doesn't involve the 60-day administrative complaint, which is going to take a while. It's not going to involve mediation, which can take a while to get set up.
And the school system has to agree to it.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
How do you find out who your educational specialist would be? Is it on like that
I
department?
don't believe their names are posted online. It might be. You can go to the State Department of Education website, special ed, and there should be a graph, a picture of the state, and it divided into the different board regions. At one time, they did put the specialist name, but when people change, quit, transfer, whatever, they decide to quit doing that because you'd have to go back in. But you can call the State Department and ask the person that answers the phone at special ed, who is the regional specialist for Opelika City?
Do you feel like the superintendents, when you made that phone call, were pretty good, or were some just going to dig in their heels and screw it?
I think when we said the words, you know, what this parent is telling me, there are grounds for her to file a due process hearing. And when you go to that hearing, you really probably need to bring your checkbook. So that they would go, well, you know, I don't think it really is not important what you think. This is what is in the law. And this is what the parent is going with. So, and they're not happy, but they would concede.
All right.
Hmm?
You found it? Oh, great.
Good.
Good morning. This is a question, I guess, either for Cindy or Nancy, and this is Jennifer. Are we making an assumption that county and city school board superintendents know the law and just don't enforce it? Or is there training needed to these key individuals by ADAP, a cooperative partnership perhaps with the Board of Education and ADAP, to have a superintendent's 101 class?
I think probably back when I was working there, they relied on that special ed coordinator. That's why I hired you. You are to know the law. And when you feel like this school district is stepping into it, you need to come in and tell me, hey, you know, we need to back this train up and do something different. I don't think they know the law like we would like for them to.
No, I don't think, to me, the weakest link in the chain is the building principal.
Yes.
I think
that's the other one.
the building principals think they are all that in a bag of chips.
Yes, ma'am. Amen.
And I literally have seen, I was sitting in an IEP meeting down in, I think, Southeast Alabama, like Geneva County, somewhere. Anyway, in the meeting, the principal was there, the special ed coordinator was there, and the other teachers in the building, and the principal was getting so aggravated, he stood up and went, "My staff, we're leaving us, mom and me, and the special education coordinator," because I don't think she didn't consider herself his staff. He was pulling out of the meeting his school's people. And she's sitting there wide-eyed, having been hung out to dry basically by this principal. So I think for all the struggle that we might have with the special education coordinator, I think sometimes they get hung out by the principal, who again thinks, this is my little fiefdom and I'm going to run it the way I want to run it. So I don't know if you've. Yeah. Oh, really? Another PIPA member. Okay. Yeah. And a lot of times it's because of the checkbook. I'm gonna just be honest. So, yeah.
Angela Richardson, I can agree with that, with both of you, because in the issue that I recently dealt with, where I had to contact the principal, then I contacted the principal's boss, he deferred to his special education director. And she basically, to cover herself because she didn't respond to any of my communications, said, oh, she denied some services we offered her. What I did is I actually sent the superintendent for that particular school area videos of my son's ability to speak and communicate. It was like, does he look like somebody that I ever declined services for? He's been in early intervention since he was 3. There's no way I've ever turned down anything you offered. So yeah, they defer to them, but they're going to do whatever. In this case, she did whatever she needed to do, cover herself.
And we have a lot of brand new coordinators out there.
Yeah. And yeah, so I actually wanted to circle back to what Jennifer was asking in terms of superintendents not knowing and do they need some kind of training. I think you're probably familiar with a few years ago, there was an effort to try and require the State School Board Association to put together a training for school board members. It yielded some results. My understanding is that state superintendents, when they train to become a superintendent, they go to an academy that actually is housed at UA. And I don't know right now today what the level is of special education training and law training that they get. That would be a really interesting thing to find out. And we could readily do that just by contacting folks across campus. But I suspect it's not much. And I say that because, and this is kind of getting to the bigger picture, have things changed, Cindy? Isn't it the case that when you want to become a regular ed teacher in the state of Alabama, the certification requirements are only that you take how many classes in teaching special ed?
18 hours, it's 12 or 18. It's not many. It's not enough to give
really
you
instruct a general ed
for
teacher
you to be able to be a good teacher for those students.
And I think it gets to, and again, I think it gets to the second class status that special ed students occupy in the state. And I think it also gets to the second class status that the Division of Special Ed Services at the State Department. Yeah.
Okay, this is Christy Giles. I got my bachelor's from Grand Canyon University in early elementary and special education. The majority of my degree was based off of early elementary with enough special education just to make me stupid.
Enough to be dangerous?
Yes. I already had knowledge from previous experiences with ADAP, my daughter, the whole 9 yards. But I never received training from our school district on the law ever. And I know for a fact the coordinator that hired me and is still there only gets training that the State Department offers through their attorneys and special ed department. She doesn't get any other extra training. So she actually will ask me questions. Yes. And then the general ed teachers know nothing, because when I would go to them and say, this is the IEP, it's a legally binding document, whether you put your John Hancock on it or not, I've read it to you. You know the accommodations. You will lose certification if you do not do them, if you get a parent that's feisty enough. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, this is a law. This is the law. They don't know. They have no clue. Nobody's teaching them anything.
We used to discuss the Withers case at all of our trainings about the accommodations in the general ed teacher's responsibility. Y'all know about that, the Withers?
No, describe it.
It's been so many, I can't get all the details correct. Apparently this young man was in a regular ed class with some accommodations. The teacher that was his teacher wasn't providing the accommodations, and the child was not making good grades and just struggling. That teacher decided he wanted to run for the legislature. I think it's the state of Virginia, West Virginia. But anyway, he left to pursue his political career. They brought in another teacher who did provide all the accommodations that this child needed, and the child was successful. So that it clicked for the parents. What the problem was Mr. Withers, the teacher. Yes.
Good morning. My name is LaTanya Snow. In my experience, when my daughter was in high school, what I learned is that the director, she knew what needed to be done, but she have not trained her peers on what needed to be done. And I was just like, I said, well, okay, well, why don't you tell them or ask them? You're not, I was asking for certain things from my child, but she was like, if another parent come and ask me, they're not going to come and ask me what you're asking. And I didn't get any of that from her, like none of the questions that I need to ask. I got it from my aunt. My aunt was a director in Chicago, Illinois school system, and she told me what to ask. And it was just,
if I was a coordinator for a school system, I would want all of my teachers to know as much as I know, so they can answer questions and do the right thing.
This is
You
Emily.
were speaking a new language to them.
Just as an example, a teacher in our district was coming from a private school background. And so when she came to the public school, she said, I'm just nervous because I don't know the special ed stuff. And she was reassured by a fellow teacher at the school, don't worry, I've never had a kid with an IEP for anything other than speech. Yeah, and I was like, well, she might be getting one.
Well, and that speaks to the divide. There's somebody else's kids. There's somebody else's adults. There's something other than our community. And isn't that sad? So I know folks here have already pretty much identified their policy projects for PIPA for this year. But Cindy, if somebody in the future wanted to have, every partner here in the room has to come up with their own policy project that has a particular goal, and they have to lay out the plans and they have to implement it. So if in the future a partner member wanted to do something around changing how superintendents are trained, changing how principals are trained, even teachers, what would be, if you were queen for the day, what would you want to do by way of changing how teachers or principals or superintendents understand special ed and the law?
I would want to make sure that they fully understood the law and understood you implement it with fidelity. You don't pick and choose the pieces that you want to comply with just because it's going to cost me some money. So be it. FAPE is FAPE. There's nothing in there. It says free. It doesn't say affordable public education. It's not APE, it's FAPE.
Cindy, we need to use that in the future. That's a good soundbite.
Yeah, the A is for appropriate, not affordable.
All right.
Okay. But I think that's what I'm seeing today working at ADAP. Feel like it's 20 years ago when I first started at the department. The level of knowledge, competency, understanding that these children are a part of the system. They're not out here. They're in with your other kids. They are part of the system. Their parents are just as much a part of the system as anybody else's parents, and they needed to be treated accordingly, that their education is just as important as that gifted child.
So where is that you understand that superintendents do get trained? Am I right about the fact that it is? through them?
I believe you're correct. It's that superintendent's academy.
Okay.
How much they get of special ed, I don't know.
Okay.
If it's just here's another law you need to read tonight while you're, watching TV in your room.
No, at
or-
the bar. Come on.
Well, or does someone stand up there and explain that this is a federal law, it is binding, and these are the things you need to make sure you're cognizant of, and your coordinator, that is the person that's your compliance officer, for lack of a better word. That person is supposed to make sure that everybody's complying with the law in terms of the IEPs and the services that are being provided. And the coordinator is supposed to work with that principal, even though that he is the king of that domain. She is the consultant, so to speak, to help keep him on the right track should he choose to stay on the right track.
So there are opportunities for training and expanding the knowledge of special ed or school administrators at the superintendent level, the principal level, and so on.
Yes.
So it would seem like that might be a really nice advocacy opportunity for a partner in the future. And we so need it.
Well, and Cindy, isn't there, because I retired from a school system in 2019, there was the Alabama School Principals Association and the Superintendents Association, because often our administrator would be leaving to go to those particular professional developments for principal or superintendent. So it seems to me that would be an opportunity. But as far as collaboration is going to, and Emily, your comment about the IEP, one of the best memories of my daughter's early education in elementary school, our principal, she was new to special ed and compliance, but she embraced it. And she attended a national conference. A particular speaker totally changed her heart and her mind. She came back, and for the in-service training for our teachers, it was at Oak Mountain Elementary School. I'm very proud of that school. She held a wedding ceremony, a mock wedding ceremony between general education and special education. Dressed up. The teachers had to dress up as though they were going to a ceremony. They didn't know what was going to happen. They were just given instruction. And they had, this is how our faculty is going to function, as if you were wedded to one another, that you establish a bond. So
that's
you
the
have
way
to get
it's supposed to
creative,
be.
but it was a beautiful year of service.
Yes.
Real meaningful partnership. Wow.
This is Maria. I have a question regarding how much training do administrators, special ed teachers, or State Department people, the higher level, get about cultural competency, so that they do understand our families have traditions, that they do not get to be judged for their beliefs, Is there anything that is available for them?
I would say no. Now, there is a section in the State Department, it's called Federal Programs, and there is a liaison. And she is the English second language person. So that is her job, is to work with the school districts out there, principals, teachers, whoever, to help them bridge those gaps that you're talking about.
Well, at least
But-
at least to bridge the gap in terms of providing education
Yes.
in alternate languages, but not necessarily to
The
understand the
cultural pieces,
cultural
no.
piece. Yeah.
That is not addressed.
And that person many times is not invited to the IEP meetings, the ESL.
Probably not. However, we do collaborate at the State Department. When I would get a phone call and it pertained to ESL, that's not my knowledge base. And I'm going, I would just say, ma'am, I'm going to have to get back with you. And then I would call that person and say, okay, this is the special ed issue. Now, tell me the ESL pieces that we need to put together to make this work. And we could do it that way. And that is done at the State Department all the time, because I only know special ed, but I know names of other people all around the department that I can call and say, I need help with this.
So at least as far as the language barriers, maybe getting that coordinated, but that doesn't hit the deeper issue that you're talking about.
No, the cultural part is
Yeah.
not addressed.
Yeah. That would be a great partners project for the future. Yep. I know you already have.
I'm just a parent groupie, but no, I hear what y'all are saying, but to me, there's a gap. The people who are here to help, in the grand scheme of things, you're a minority. So just what she just asked, she said, is there somebody who can help with the cultural difference? And you said, well, we have a person. Just out of the stuff I've picked up from the past couple of days, in the state of Alabama, there's 1.4 million disabled individuals, and only 6% of those are getting the services they need. So it's like, you do have a person, but that person needs to have a team, or there's something there's something that we're missing. And unfortunately, as advocates, I see that, like, okay, at school, what we had, what was Pam? Yeah. Okay. And for her to say what she said, from kindergarten to 5th grade, this lady we got to the point we was on a first name basis with her. And then to say that we denied services, no, because I took him to all kind of stuff. But even with that, when there were times when she went there was somebody else, or there was somebody else we could go to. But that was only to a certain degree. We knew that wasn't going to happen after elementary school. It's just not available. And I don't want him to be stigmatized to be in what they used to call it, the LD class, learn this bit. So that's not, we weren't going that route. But there should be a team. I can work to help support and know that, but I think part of that is what it is. It's knowledge. Not everybody knows. And like you said about for the superintendent, our superintendent knows us. He knows us. When we walked into the Board of Education meeting, he leaned over to the chairman and he whispered to her.
There they are.
Unbeknownst to him, though, she was on our side, and come to find out that she knows I grew up with her family members. So, she said, well, we're going to try to help you. She said, it's a shame that y'all have to come, the Richardsons have to come in here and ask for this. Hey, and we're asking the school that I graduated from. Now, isn't that a flip? The school that I graduated from, all they had to do was say, well, Mr. Richardson, we'll put your son's name on here and allow him to compete. But with that, it's I'm going to back up my people no matter what. And so they just kept saying no. Well, Angela kept saying, well, why? What process are you using? We're just going to say no. Yeah, you're not enrolled in school. Well, you didn't say that for the 2 people I know that live in apartments. You put the kids up in apartments so they could play ball. So, and you try not to go that route with them, but it happens.
So I learned yesterday over dinner with you that you work in the mining industry. And I'm betting that every one of your coworkers, as they do their technical jobs, also are infused with the notion of safety, 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 that just is part and parcel of the job. Safety, safety, safety. Can't work in a mine if you're not paying attention to that. Unfortunately, it is the case, to your point about one person, that whether it's at the State Department or wherever, we tend to be very siloed. And there's the ESL person, there's the special ed person, there's the, whatever kind of issue it is. But I don't think we've necessarily come far enough in our thinking that just like safety has to be part and parcel of every mine worker's daily functioning, it's part of it. We don't infuse a disability focus. We don't pay attention to it. It's always somebody else's job. And I think that's one of the great goals of what Partner's trying to do, is to say it's a natural part of the human experience. We all have to be thinking about how a person with a disability is going to experience what it is we're providing. If we're providing English language services, well, what about the person with a disability? How is that person going to be a meaningful participant in this particular English language program, whatever it is?
I'm glad to hear you say that, because overruled. I'm keep talking about. Thank you. So you almost made me lose my thought. But the way we try to do it is, most of the people, we only have, for a industry of 400 people, there's only like 4 people in my position. Okay. But for the 4 people that are in that position, we've just about had 100% of those jobs. So I know what it takes to do that job. But the way I try to put it, and I think it's sort of, I don't watch football all the time, but if we can think about if everybody, if all of us are on the field, okay, everybody's on the field, and you're in a stadium, there's 30,000 people in that stadium, 50 guys on this team, 50 guys on the other. What happens when one person on that field gets hurt? What happens? Everything stops. Everything stops. Everybody's concerned. That's what we need to do. Some kind of how we need to get everybody's focus to where, because that's why I said this is the human function. I mean, it's what it is. We can't get around. It has nothing to do with color, age, nothing like that. So when somebody needs this help, we got to try to have everybody else stop and for it to be a focus. And unfortunately, that's, like you just said, it's not what it is. I'm concerned about productivity and this and that. And hey, please do your job and don't get hurt. But for a few of us, it's like, hey, no matter what, you don't do nothing that's unsafe for no reason.
I have 2 points. This is Angela Richardson. The first one is, all superintendents need a crash course with Alan Bergerman and Graham Sessom. That'll help them. The second thing, Cindy, I wanted to ask you, and we could probably have a private conversation about it as well, is since I homeschool my son and he's disabled, how do we help the school districts systematically statewide to realize that even though a child's parents are choosing to homeschool, they still have an obligation to service them? They may not say they're required to. Yeah, and private school. Yeah, exactly. Homeschool and private school students, because that's my project. It's like, and that's what my email has to be to Dr. Mackey about. How do we bridge the gap and create uniformity so that homeschooled and private school students who are disabled are not marginalized within the districts. That needs to be fixed.
That would come with the revision of the federal law, because that's the law that said that private school providers and there's a collaboration meeting and they determine what services are going to be provided. So that came down from the feds. So I guess we call it special ed light. You get some, but not all that you might need.
So my son, we're not even.
So what Cindy's referring to is the federal law is going to provide the floor. The federal law says for every private school, well, okay, and I'm going to say something a little bit even scarier. I had a conversation, well, actually I had an email conversation with the former director of special ed where we reviewed what a private school or how a private school is defined in the state of Alabama. And homeschooled children, unless they are enrolled in a particular kind of homeschooling association, don't even qualify as a private school student that would then enable them to access the minimum support that the IDEA requires be provided to them. So if you're if you're enrolled in a private school, if you're going to Montgomery Academy down the street, and you go to your school district and say, my child goes to Montgomery Academy, he has a disability, what can you provide to him? They have an obligation to evaluate him. They have an obligation to say, basically, if you walked him in the door of the public school, this is what we'd give him. But because he's enrolled in the private school, what we're going to do is we're going to assess all of the needs of private school students in my district, in our district. And basically, they're going to figure out where they can get the biggest bang for their buck in terms of supporting those private school students. As a private school student, federal law does not require that they get that full appropriate free education. It really is up to the school district to decide how they're going to spend the little tiny bit of money that they're required to spend on privately enrolled students. That goes for transition services as well, because that's part and parcel of any special ed support. So the federal law is going to provide the basic floor. You must at least do this. Now, arguably, state law could provide more to private school or homeschooled students. But right now, state law does not require that, and neither does the federal law. So that's kind of the legal landscape in which you're operating. Now, I will say this, that if you are a client of vocational rehabilitation, you are entitled, you get an IPE, an individualized plan of employment. And in that IPE, there are a variety of services that can be provided to a child or to a young person to help them prepare for employment. Now, whether it's would include speech or OT, maybe not, but there are a variety of services that could be fashioned to help your child outside of the education system to help get him ready for employment. Now, the problem with that is voc rehab, the laws around voc rehab don't give your child an entitlement to any specific set of services, unlike special ed. If you're public ed and you have a special or an IEP, you're entitled to whatever it is that you need to meet your disability related needs. Voc rehab, there's no entitlement. You may or may not get the service. You're not going to get it necessarily for free either, because VR can adopt a sliding fee scale for services. So that's why when I talk to parents about their 19-year-old child who is very, very eager to graduate high school, because who wouldn't at the age of 19 want to get the heck out? What I say to parents is, this is your last best chance for services to which your child will legally be entitled. It is for many children, for many adults with disabilities, special ed is the single biggest, best entitlement they will ever get in their entire lives. So use it for every penny you're going to get out of it, for every service you're going to get out of it, to prepare your young child or your young adult child for adult living. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, kids don't want to stay in school after they're 18. They want to get out, and I get that entirely. And I think what school districts fail, and you maybe have a comment about this, what they fail to do is create really good programs for the 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds to make them want to stay in school and get the benefit of that free, appropriate public education.
They don't want to come back to school and go into a classroom and do worksheets and sit at a computer.
But they don't have to.
That's not.
And
no.
that's where good parent advocacy can mean the difference, because you can create a very individualized plan for that 19-year-old. You could say, okay, you still need help with reading and math. We're going to give you reading tutoring and math tutoring, I don't know, 6 hours a week. And beyond that, we're going to provide you vocational supports and job shadowing and work experiences to get you ready for the big wide world. But schools, that's too individualized, Cindy.
It's work. I have to, think outside the box.
Yeah.
This is Emily, just since you brought it up, because we're not at transition yet, but it's my understanding once they have met the graduation criteria, they would have to leave, or not necessarily, as long as we still had IEP goals that we were working towards. How does that work?
Once you don't want to ever accept a diploma, don't accept it, because once you accept that diploma, you're out. So what you would want to do as an older student is talk about, well, we might have finished, the 4x4 curriculum, but my child still needs assistance in doing these transition services, whatever they are. They still need special ed, but don't accept, and your child can still participate. Let's be clear. They can still go through the graduation ceremony with their peers. They are entitled to do that. But when they walk across the stage, they need to get an empty folder, a fake piece of paper. That's right. They need to get that fake piece of paper. And then the next day you can be back at an IEP meeting planning for a post-graduation 13th grade plan for your child. One that focuses on, most specifically, one would think, adult living, whether it's independent living in the community or employment. And a lot of creativity has to go into that. And unfortunately, sometimes that's where we don't have that. So, all right. I thank you, my friend.
The warm-up band is finished.
Yeah. Thank you for coming this morning. Greatly appreciated. Poor Cindy didn't know I was going to put her on the spot like this. So I think it just shows what how game she is for most anything that comes her way.
Anything you need me to do.
You're on the team now. You are on the team. Okay, so thank you again for that intro. An update on the time, and the speaker is still en route. I know on the agenda we were adjourning at 11:30 a.m. If you need to leave, we understand. He is traveling from Mobile, so he will be here shortly. I'm going to go check with the hotel, make sure we have the room, and we will live stream if all that works out well. So we will keep you updated. One other thing that we wanted to add in to the program that will benefit all of you and everybody that you will talk to. And like I said, we hope that you continue to share partners with your friends and anybody else that you know. So if you remember the January session, we had a panel with the ADRS commissioner, Byron Wright with the Department of Mental Health, and Tim McCartney with Alabama Workforce Development. And when Tim was talking, he shared with us what the state of Alabama is developing around employment. And it's for lack of a better word, it's going to be like an app, and it's going to kind of do some things that Indeed.com does for employment and helping people in Alabama find jobs, the 40% that are not working, trying to connect the people, the employers and the employees. And when I asked him a few questions, he included me in the next meeting they had. So I attended that last week, and it's still not up and running. So it is still in the developmental stages, which is awesome because they want to include people with disabilities. But one of the other big key takeaways that I got from that meeting was they're going to try and pull from different apps that are already out there, not reinvent every wheel. But LinkedIn is one that if you have a LinkedIn profile, when they get theirs up and running, it will pull some of that information. And what their program is going to be is a skills-based program, not that, hey, I graduated from this college or I have this one, but to get you certificates, highlight your skills, which people with disability, they have a lot of skills. It doesn't necessarily translate into the programs that are out there now to highlight what they can do and what they're good at. So I'm real excited that the state is partnering with this to look at what the employment that we have and to get them into the workforce if they want to be there. So with that said, LinkedIn is something that is easy to do. It's free and it's a business area thing, and you can highlight your skills and what you're good at. So we'd like everybody to have, just if you don't have one, to start a LinkedIn account. We wanted to kind of highlight what that is. So to do that, we're going to open a new account, and Emily has volunteered to open a new account with that. And then we're going to connect and let you see what Alan Bergman's account looks like, what Bill Fuller's account looks like, maybe what Brooks looks like, because she has one, because she connected with them last night. So Emily's going to come up and kind of, or go over to Alex and fill in the personal information to start the account. We're going to watch it up here on the big screen and kind of look at that. And we're going to ask everybody, it's not a, not a requirement, but it is going to be beneficial to you going on.
And if you do not, raise your hand if you do not have one. I'm too close, sorry. Is everyone else active? Okay, well, we're gonna update. And so I'm thinking that what we'll do is, well, you'll have your, probably before we get our resource handbook after, but we'll have, I'll send out notable people that we know are on LinkedIn. So if you want to pull it up on your phone, you can do it now. If not, I'll send it out. Like Alan Berg. Any speakers that we've had, yeah, Alan Bergman's on there. I connected last night with Bill Fuller. So go ahead and make those connections. We'll wait on Emily. So I activated my account like 10 years ago, and then I only recently updated it again. So I am by no means an expert on LinkedIn. Pull up Instagram and I'll get you where you need to go. But LinkedIn, I'm learning also. So she's going to, and almost everyone has one. You can pull up yours on your phone right now. Look at her. She's so dedicated over there, guys. Round of applause for Emily. Stepping out of her comfort zone and being in the spotlight. Oh, sorry. So who is very active on LinkedIn? You're active? Well, come up, offer us some tips. We'll make this an interactive session. Yeah. Perfect. She's going to wait. Do her code. My ears are ringing, so I'm sorry if I'm not sure. Don't look at her password. No, it's not. I'm just teasing. I needed some levity. That's up to you. You can go back and add it in later if you want. Okay, so let's search right there. Bill Fuller. And he is, we'll see his lovely picture somewhere. Scroll till you find him. He's there, I know. Maybe Bill Fuller, Alabama. There he is in his bow tie. Connect. Yep. So that you've sent him a friend request. Yeah. There you go. Now click on his name and bring up his profile. Oh, where'd he go? Yeah, I wanted her to. Yeah. Okay. So, Miss Nancy Anderson, do you have a LinkedIn account? Let's. Can we connect with you on LinkedIn? I'll take that as a no. See? So there's one way. No. It is. Yeah. I'm sorry. High impact. There he was. Oop, up a little bit. Where'd he go? Yep, that's him. Click on his name before you hit connect and we'll bring up his page. Ah. Yeah, we'll blame. Scroll down. I thought it was Ian. We're having so much fun. No, it wasn't. It was two. It was just there. Okay. Search Angela. Angela Richardson. We're having so much fun. So you can definitely. I had to pick.
As you can see, how many people are on LinkedIn now? It used to be you could really just put the name in there. There weren't that many, but you can tell how many that there are active here. So
Okay. So how about, so now we've seen how to search for people. Yes, ma'am. I will get that from Alex, and she did not send that to me. She gave that direct. Oh, Nancy has the link. We'll get it out. So let's stop searching. I'll stop putting you on the spot. I'm so sorry. You're doing a great job. I was going to help you set it up. Go down, see where it says skip for now. We won't make you connect with people. Okay. So then you can go in. I think since everyone most people already have one, you know how to add your bio. you can add, and you'll add tag words, disability, hearing loss, anything that you want, anything relating to physical therapy, add that too. Okay. Yeah, so Austin, does anybody have any questions? Everybody, you guys are good. Any minute now? I told Linda 11:45, the last we heard, but we have not heard that he's here yet. Perfect. Perfect. And if you need to leave, we understand. Yeah, we understand.